John, saying nothing else, John.
Yeah, everything Steve said. When I look at CVs, resumes, the only thing that will guarantee an interview is if they've got journalism experience or a journalism degree. That's the only time that, without reading anywhere else on the CV, they're guaranteed they're going to get an interview with me, because they've got that experience on the other side of the fence. Generally, a PR who's a journalist in a previous life knows what the other journalist is going to ask before they ask it.
And you're not biased, John, because you weren't a journalist for 8 years prior to becoming a PR person.
How about that? And it's just from the industry that I worked in the UK, a lot of journalists jumped the fence, and it worked quite well.
That's what you're
other than that, Steve's absolutely right. You've got to find someone who's got something they're really, really passionate about in one way.
I mean, your answers are interesting, because if we talk to recruiters today, they're telling everybody, digital. You need to have digital. You need to have digital to get a job. I mean, this is what we're hearing, and I think this is what people are being told, and maybe they feel under pressure to go out and, you know, really ramp up their skills in that area, and therefore forget the other skills. I mean, you know, personally, writing is the biggest, you know, skill that anyone can come to me with, and that's imperative, you know. So still language skills, they're still essential to what we do, you know. So I'm wondering if there's kind of a discrepancy between, you know, what perhaps the recruitment industry is telling people and what the individual within an agency is looking for. And I think we all have different requirements, so it's hard, but...
we're all hungry for digital talent, or social talent. So I think there's a difference between Emma Prospect, I know, is sponsoring this evening, and Emma Prospect, I talked to her a lot about the digital people we need, and there's a long list of digital staff that we potentially need, but we also need people that digital is not a core part of their skills.
It's not all about social people. We're going to open the floor to questions, so just pop your hand up and ask away.
Okay. Yeah. So about PR and social, I would like to talk about recent happenings in Hong Kong, which is the anti-national education movement in Hong Kong. Actually, I'm one of the people who got really engaged by the campaign that they're running on Facebook. And then I actually follow all the postings and all the messages that they post across to the community. And then I believe that this is because it is blending in some political issues that making the message so engaging to people. And so I want to know about, from this case, what can we learn about as a PR people to make use of some social or recent happenings and messaging to build relationship with our potential people, potential targets. Is there any inspiration from this case? Because this is quite an important incident in Hong Kong, and I would think this is one of the typical example of PR and social when they fusion together in a kind of social crisis issue.
Venus talked about it a little bit earlier in terms of the importance of social in the issue space. And I think that anytime you have a group of people that are passionate about an issue, the social media is where you're going to go to see the most interaction and the most movement. So I think what you learn is, the learning that you ask for is all about the relevance, the specific relevance of issues. And you can, I think we're seeing it all over the world, whether it's in the social space, narrowly focused, or the broader kind of when you look at the mobile and social in terms of what's happened in the Arab Spring, et cetera, that was also. So the social issues, the social, how do we say it? The social issues within the context of social media, I think are hugely important. We're also seeing it a lot in public education campaigns, that we can move in public education, whether they're anti-smoking campaigns or diabetes or heart disease kind of campaigns, that the social environment is where you gain the most traction for those. So any kind of issue work needs to have a strong social, it almost needs to be what we call, we all use the expression social by design, as opposed to the afterthought of the dessert. It's got to be designed right into the center of the program. Yeah.
Follow-up question, may I? Yeah, so since the theme of today is PR and social across generations, so sometimes we would regard print media kind of older generation, if I would say that. And digital is something most frontier and the latest media. So when I see the influence of social media now is gaining its weight, is because I would see a lot of the local people that they are actually moved more by the social interaction than the print media's messaging or support. So I would like to also see your views on this, because we are comparing media of different generations on a single identical issue. And yeah, I know it's political, it's a big thing, but it can also apply to other campaigns like anti-smoking or abortion or etc. Different other kinds of social topics that private organizations may also have social responsibility to speak for, and also to engage the target audience that you wanted to attract.
So I think it's especially interesting as I'm a post-80, and it's interesting in that China may be more interested in Asia, where some people censor information. And like you said, the national education, and maybe not to bring up another issue, but the Diaoyutai islands, you can see maybe the media talking differently in traditional print than in Weibo, and maybe some people, they pick different platforms to complain on. Maybe if Sina Weibo is too public, then maybe they'll pick another Weibo where people won't be able to catch them as easily. So you'll be able to see a lot of different dialogues, online and offline, and compare to analyze and see how the communication complex is working, how it's transferring from one media to another.
I think, I said I wouldn't make predictions, but the one obvious prediction is, yes, you're absolutely right. Within all the issue space, social media is going to play the key role, not just a role. I think it's going to play the key role in everything we see in the issues management space in the future.
Hi, thanks. I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, the skill sets, Steve, that you may have had to have when you came into this industry. Do you think young people now may appreciate a crisis because they've seen it explode at a much faster rate than it may have when we relied on traditional media and I don't know, even radio to some extent? But a crisis seems to unfold almost instantly now, and I mean, do you think, how does that mix in with the skills that you may have had as a journalist, and you see younger people coming into this industry who haven't had the experience of traditional media? I mean, how do they sit together?
Yeah, there's a number of ways of looking at that. I think one of the first things is that some people still don't recognise when a crisis is actually going to happen. It doesn't matter what the medium is. I think what we have now is a younger generation who are able to spot potential crisis or crises before they do start to explode.
Do the skills that they have today, like without that traditional media background, do they prepare for a crisis?
Do the skills they have today prepare them for the crisis? I think they do, yeah. I think because they're able to react quicker, they're used to thinking quicker, and they're thinking, what's my next conversation after this, after this, after this? I think that's more and more likely going to put them in a better stead for reacting quicker. Of course, the one thing that they won't be able to do is, someone like with Steve's great experience, is have dealt with crises over the years and said, okay, how are we going to deal with this?
I'm not sure, the new world, frankly. Yeah, I do, so I've got a lot of experience. But and the way that the speed in which crises are unfolding nowadays, you're right, is absolutely, it's instantaneous. So no one is quite prepared for that. It was interesting. I had a journalist the other day called me up doing a piece on crisis communications, and why don't more corporations have crisis plans in place. And they get kind of whittled away from the budgets on the side or whittled away from the CEO's schedule and time. And that's becoming, I think it's got to be more front, to your point, and bring it up, it's got to be more front and center to every single company, corporation, foundation, doesn't matter what side they're on. But I do think that crisis communications training internally, it's something that every single employee has to go through in an agency, so that no matter what generation you're of, you're recognizing and you're listening for them in the online environment.
Thanks. I think when we were talking earlier about, is it all about social, and is social essential skills? But I think you said everyone in the organisation has to have issues in crisis management. I don't think that is the case, and I think that people coming into the industry think, that is for the guy who's been here for 50 years. They fall to the most experienced person. So, we're sitting here talking about social, but there are probably other skills like issues and crises that people aren't up to scratch on, and they need to be, because social is impacting the response times, and the people that have to manage that.
Any other questions? We've got time for a couple more.
Just going to follow up from the point that Emma just made. In fact, I went to a very interesting discussion at the FCC a couple of weeks ago. Possibly some of you were there too. The discussion was, which do we believe is more trusted in Hong Kong today, traditional media or social media? For everything that's just been said, no, I won't add any insights. I'll just throw that one open to you guys, if I may.
The research I've seen depends on, it's totally generational. So you probably get a different response, but you get over sort of the 40, 50 age group, and the traditional media is still there because of the depth of, hopefully the depth of the reporting. As you move down generations, we're seeing more credibility come from friends and family, if you will.
Yeah, I think one of the problems we're seeing with social media as well is that it's easier to manipulate. Classic example was just a couple of weeks ago when there was an unfortunate car accident when a politician's son in China was killed in a Ferrari. All of a sudden you couldn't search for Ferrari in China on the search engines. All of a sudden it just went to a blank space. So that's an example of how social media can easily be manipulated, and that's something we need to be wary of, particularly in Hong Kong.
Newspapers here are so widely read, more than probably any other market in the world.
Oh yeah. Well, you just got to see. You come out of every MTR station in the morning, and I can't see people turning them down. People are still taking them day after day, and unlike iPhones, they don't crash, they don't get viruses, they don't run out of battery, and you don't mind if you leave it on the bus. I think it's a bit of both.
I'd love to go back to the FCC conversation, though. That you were sitting with a lot of journalists. What did they think, and where was the credibility coming from their perspective?
Well, it's very interesting, in fact, because from what I could gather, the audience was mostly composed of PR professionals, whereas the panel was guys like Steve Vines and Wang Feng, who's just taken over at the SCMP Online, or as the online editor of the SCMP. That question was asked at the start of the session, and bearing in mind that the terms of the question were which is more trusted today in Hong Kong, and a handful of people, perhaps half a dozen, put their hands up to say they believe social media to hold greater trust. I think they were possibly employees of one of the guys on the panel, in fact. But then the question was re-asked after the discussion, and the verdict was more or less the same. The same five guys stuck their hands in the air. So perhaps paradoxically, that suggests that PR professionals secretly believe that even today in Hong Kong, traditional media is or remains the more trusted.
And if that's the case, it's going to